Sergeant CLA Reynolds shifted her weight, feeling the ache in her knees and shoulders as she clutched her boarding pass. The airport buzzed around her, families reuniting, hurried business travelers, and children darting past with laughter. After 9 relentless months in a conflict zone, she was finally on U.S. soil again, surrounded by the comforting hum of everyday life. For most, today was just another Tuesday, but for CLA, today was the first day she'd breathe easy in a long time. The sights, sounds, and smells of the airport terminal felt surreal, too familiar and too foreign at once. She let her eyes drift over the crowd, taking in their peaceful expressions, a world apart from the hardened faces and wary eyes she had grown used to overseas. Here, people were free to worry about delayed flights, the overpriced coffee, and the little annoyances of daily life. But for CLA, freedom had a different flavor. The bittersweet relief of surviving the battlefield and coming home with memories that would forever haunt her. In her hand, her boarding pass marked her seat in the economy class. She didn't mind the cramped space or lack of luxury, not after where she'd been, but she couldn't deny her exhaustion. The longing for just a bit of comfort, maybe a little extra legroom. She sighed, glancing around the boarding area, feeling a subtle pull toward first class. Then, a familiar thought surfaced, one she'd grown accustomed to since joining the military. Soldiers like her didn't expect comfort. Comfort was for people who didn't wake up every day wondering if it might be their last. As she stood in line, a tall man in a sharply cut suit took his place beside her. He carried himself with a self-assuredness that caught her eye. His gaze landed on her uniform, lingering a moment longer than felt polite. She stiffened slightly, feeling his unspoken questions. Perhaps curiosity, perhaps something else. But she brushed it off, dismissing the stare as the gate attendant announced the beginning of boarding. Just a few more steps to the plane, she thought. Then the endless hours of memories and fatigue might give way to something new. A homecoming she had dreamed of for months. As she walked forward, the man in the suit approached the gate attendant with a quiet word she couldn't quite catch. She turned away, uninterested in anything but making it home in one piece. It had been a long tour, full of grueling days, and she had given her all. Her body bore the physical signs of her service, but the weight in her heart was heavier. She had led a squad of brave soldiers, some barely old enough to rent a car back home, and the responsibility to bring them all home safely had been a burden she had shouldered alone. Not all of them had made it back, and their faces lingered in her mind, refusing to fade. The man in the suit interrupted her thoughts as she reached the boarding gate, tapping her gently on the shoulder. She turned, surprised to see his gaze softened, a faint smile on his face. "Sergeant," he began, his voice low but earnest. "I noticed you're in uniform. Are you coming back from deployment?" "Yes," CLA replied, her voice steady despite her fatigue. "Just heading home now." The man nodded, and for a moment, his face softened with what looked like genuine gratitude. "Thank you for your service," he said, and while she'd heard those words countless times before, there was a sincerity in his tone that made her pause. She gave him a polite nod, her response automatic. "Thank you, sir. I'd like to offer you my seat in first class," he said suddenly. "It's the least I can do for someone who's done so much for our country." CLA blinked, momentarily taken aback. Rarely did strangers make such an offer, and it stirred something in her. A mixture of gratitude and hesitation. She glanced at the first-class seats just visible through the open door, envisioning the plush seat, the legroom, and the comfort her body so desperately craved. For a split second, she wanted to accept, to allow herself the relief of stretching out and letting go. But just as quickly, an instinct rooted deep within her said no. No, because soldiers didn't take handouts. They didn't seek special treatment. And, most of all, because she couldn't bring herself to accept luxury while so many of her comrades were still out there, still enduring the daily grind of survival in a war zone. "That's very kind of you," she said, her tone firm yet appreciative. "But I'm fine with my seat. Thank you, truly." He looked slightly taken aback, as though he hadn't expected her to refuse. "Are you sure?" he pressed gently. "You deserve to be comfortable after what you've been through." She met his gaze steadily, offering him a small smile. "I'm sure. I appreciate it. But my seat's just fine." With a respectful nod, he stepped back, allowing her to board. CLA felt a quiet sense of pride wash over her as she made her way down the jet bridge, her worn duffel bag slung over her shoulder. First class was tempting, yes, but her resolve was stronger. This flight home wasn't about comfort. It was about reconnecting with everything she'd fought for, finding her family, and piecing together the woman she had been before the battle scars. She slid into her window seat, leaning back with a sigh. Outside, the sun was setting, casting a warm, golden light over the tarmac. It was a peaceful sight, something rare and beautiful. And as the engines roared to life and the plane began its slow roll down the runway, CLA felt a stirring inside, a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, there was a way forward. She closed her eyes, bracing herself for the journey home, a journey that was beginning with her first act of resilience, reclaiming her place in a world that had, for so long, felt just out of reach. The plane had barely left the ground when CLA sank back into her seat, feeling her whole body release a weight she hadn't realized she was holding. The gentle hum of the engines filled the cabin, a background lull that blurred the conversations around her into a soothing, distant hum. She closed her eyes, hoping for a rare moment of quiet, of stillness, where she might finally let herself rest. But just as she began to drift, a bright voice pulled her back. "Hi there, I'm Lily." CLA opened her eyes and turned to her seatmate, a young woman with vibrant red hair cascading in loose waves over her shoulders. She wore a warm, genuine smile, her eyes bright and welcoming, radiating an energy that was almost infectious. CLA managed a polite smile, though her exhaustion made it hard to muster much enthusiasm. "Hi, I'm CLA." Lily's smile widened, as if she'd been waiting for this introduction all day. "Are you heading home?" "Yeah," CLA replied, her voice soft, almost hesitant. "I just finished a deployment." Lily's eyes lit up with genuine interest, and CLA could tell that her curiosity wasn't just a polite gesture. "Wow, that's incredible. Thank you for your service. I can't imagine what that must have been like." CLA gave the same nod of acknowledgement she'd given to countless others who'd said those words. But there was something different about Lily. Her expression wasn't tinged with the pity or awkwardness that often accompanied civilian conversations about the military. Instead, Lily's face held a look of real empathy, a depth of understanding that felt both strange and comforting. Noticing CLA's hesitation, Lily leaned in a little, lowering her voice as if to make the space between them feel more private, more secure. "I actually work with a lot of veterans. I run a nonprofit that helps soldiers transition back into civilian life. It's not much, but I try to make a difference where I can." CLA's eyebrows rose slightly, surprised. "Really? What kind of work do you do?" Lily's smile grew, and she seemed genuinely excited to talk about it. "We provide job training, mental health support, housing assistance, basically anything veterans need to get back on their feet. I started it after my brother came home from his own tour. He struggled a lot, and I realized there weren't enough resources for people like him." For the first time since boarding, CLA felt something shift within her, a flicker of interest, a faint glimmer of hope. Perhaps this flight wasn't just about returning home. Maybe, somehow, could be the beginning of something new. "What was it like for him?" CLA asked, her voice cautious but genuine. She didn't normally open up to strangers, but something about Lily's openness drew her in, like an anchor she didn't know she needed. Lily took a deep breath, her expression softening. "It was tough. He was never the same after he came back. He didn't talk about it much, but you could see it in his eyes, the weight of what he'd been through. For a long time, he tried to carry it alone. That's why I started the nonprofit. I didn't want anyone else to feel like they had to go through it by themselves." CLA felt a pang of recognition. She, too, knew what it was like to carry the weight of battle alone, to push through each day with a mask of strength while the memories simmered beneath the surface. So many soldiers she knew had returned home changed, scarred not only by what they had seen but by the challenge of finding a place in a world that no longer felt like their own. "That's really incredible," CLA said, surprised by the sincerity in her own voice. "There are a lot of people who could use something like that. Too many of us come home feeling lost." Lily reached over, gently resting a hand on CLA's arm. It was a small gesture, but it held a surprising warmth, as though she understood more than she was letting on. "Maybe you could help us someday," she said with a hopeful smile. "There's something about you, CLA, I think you'd be an incredible mentor for other veterans." The words struck CLA, lingering in the air between them. She had spent so long focused on the mission, on leading her squad and keeping her soldiers safe, that she had never once thought about what she would do beyond that. The military was all she had known, the only place where she felt she truly belonged. But now, sitting here with this stranger who saw something in her beyond the uniform, a small voice inside whispered that maybe there could be more. She let the idea settle, almost daring herself to imagine it. "I don't know if I'd be much help," CLA said, her voice barely a whisper. "Sometimes, I still feel like I'm just trying to survive." Lily shook her head gently, her eyes filled with an understanding that ran deep. "That's exactly why you'd be perfect. Surviving is its own kind of strength. CLA, people need to see that it's possible to come out the other side, even if you don't have all the answers." CLA looked down, a mixture of emotions welling up inside her. She thought of her squad, of the countless nights spent under foreign skies, her team relying on her strength. She had never seen herself as a hero, just someone trying to do her job, to bring her people home safe. But maybe Lily was right. Maybe there was something in her story, in her scars, that could mean something to someone else. The plane leveled out, and Lily leaned back in her seat, giving CLA a knowing smile. "Just think about it. No pressure. If nothing else, you have people who understand waiting for you." CLA nodded slowly, letting the silence settle between them. Outside, the sun had dipped below the horizon, casting a soft, purple glow over the clouds. She glanced out the window, feeling the quiet weight of something new, something unfamiliar, a sense of purpose that had nothing to do with rank or orders, but with her own journey and the possibility of helping others through theirs. For the first time in a long time, she felt a spark of hope. It was a fragile thing, barely more than a flicker, but it was there. Maybe, just maybe, she could find a path forward that didn't require her to leave her experiences behind, but allowed her to use them in a way she had never imagined. She glanced back at Lily, who was now scrolling through her phone with a contented smile, as if their conversation hadn't just stirred the beginnings of a new chapter in CLA's life. CLA leaned her head back, closing her eyes, and let herself imagine, just for a moment, a future she had never dared to hope for. The wheels touched down with a gentle thud, jolting CLA from her thoughts as the plane slowed on the runway. She pressed her forehead against the cool window, watching the city lights grow closer, her heart quickening with a blend of anticipation and nerves. This was it. She was home. As the passengers began to collect their bags and file toward the exit, CLA took her time, letting the reality of her return settle in. The familiar airport terminal, buzzing with life, was a world away from where she'd been just days ago. Here, the scent of fresh coffee, the sound of laughter, the low hum of daily life, it all felt surreal, like she was watching through glass, separated by the invisible lines her experiences had drawn. Stepping off the plane, she felt the weight of her duffel bag pressing into her shoulder, the same bag that had been with her through deployments, across deserts, and under foreign skies. It was strange how an object could hold so many memories, yet be unable to speak them. She spotted the crowd beyond the gate, people hurrying to embrace their loved ones, all of them caught in beautiful, mundane reunions. Somewhere in that sea of faces, she saw a familiar figure. Derek, her husband, stood there, tall and steady, his gaze scanning the crowd with a mix of longing and worry. The moment he saw her, his face softened, and in 3 strides, he was in front of her, his arms wrapping around her in a way that made her knees almost buckle. In his embrace, she felt her own weight lift, the pressure she'd carried for so long releasing into something warm and familiar. "I missed you so much," Derek whispered into her hair, his voice thick with emotion. CLA closed her eyes, letting herself lean into him fully. "I missed you too," she murmured, her voice muffled against his chest. She pulled back slightly to meet his eyes, and for the first time in months, she allowed herself to relax, even if just for a moment. "How are the kids?" she asked, her mind already racing to images of their faces, their laughter, and the tiny details she had missed. "They're good," Derek replied with a grin. "Caleb's been counting down the days, and Rosie's been planning a welcome home tea party for you. She even made a crown, sparkly, just like she thinks you'd like." CLA chuckled, a pang of longing swelling in her chest. She couldn't wait to see them, to wrap them in her arms and hold on, to reassure them that she was here, home and safe. For so many months, their lives had only intersected in fleeting video calls, where the small, bright screen had shown smiles that never quite reached their eyes. As they walked through the terminal, Derek took her bag, slinging it over his shoulder without a word. He held her hand, his grip steady and warm, grounding her as they moved through the bustling crowds. The simple act of holding his hand, of walking side by side, felt like a luxury she hadn't realized she'd missed so much. The drive home was quiet, filled with the comfortable silence of two people who didn't need words to fill the space between them. CLA gazed out the window, watching the familiar streets and buildings of her hometown roll by, each one evoking a memory, a piece of the life she had left behind. The houses, the trees, the streetlights, they all looked the same, yet she felt a shift within herself, an invisible line separating who she had been before she left and who she was now. "Derek," she said softly, breaking the silence. "Have you ever thought about what comes next? I mean, for us, for me." Derek's eyes flicked over to her, his brow furrowing in a mixture of surprise and understanding. "We've talked about it a little, haven't we? I know it's been on your mind." CLA nodded, her thoughts drifting to her conversation with Lily on the plane. "I met someone on the flight back," she began, hesitating, unsure how to explain the strange mix of hope and uncertainty Lily's words had stirred in her. "Her name's Lily. She runs a nonprofit for veterans, helping them adjust to life back home. We talked about a lot of things I hadn't thought about before." Derek's expression softened, a quiet understanding filling his gaze. "Thinking about getting involved? Maybe," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't know what it would look like, but it feels important, like there's something there for me to explore." Derek gave her hand a reassuring squeeze. "You've always been more than just a soldier, CLA. You have so much to offer outside the military." He glanced at her, a soft smile tugging at his lips. "Maybe this is your way of finding what comes next." They pulled into the driveway, and CLA felt a pang of nostalgia as she took in the sight of their modest suburban home. It looked just as it had when she'd left, quaint and cozy, with the porch swing gently swaying in the evening breeze. But tonight felt different, as if it were welcoming her back, reminding her of everything she had fought to return to. Before she could gather her thoughts, the front door burst open, and two small figures shot out into the night, their voices high-pitched and filled with joy. "Mom!" Caleb, her 10-year-old, reached her first, his arms wrapping around her waist in a fierce hug. Behind him, Rosie, her 6-year-old daughter, bounced on her tiptoes, her face a mixture of excitement and awe as she clung to her mother's legs. CLA knelt down to their level, enveloping them both in a tight embrace. She hadn't realized just how much she had missed them until this very moment. Their small, warm bodies pressed against hers, their laughter filling the night air. "I missed you both so much," she whispered, her voice cracking with emotion. "We missed you too, Mom," Caleb said, pulling back just enough to look up at her. "Can I show you my science project later? It's really cool." CLA ruffled his hair, a smile breaking through her exhaustion. "Of course, buddy. I can't wait to see it." Rosie tugged on her sleeve, her big brown eyes shining. "And I made you a crown for the tea party," she said proudly, her voice bubbling with excitement. "It's sparkly, just like you like." CLA laughed, brushing a strand of hair from Rosie's face. "I can't wait to wear it, sweetie. It sounds perfect." Derek helped carry her bags inside, and as they walked through the front door, CLA felt a wave of warmth and familiarity wash over her. The house was filled with the comforting smell of roasted chicken, a sign that Derek had prepared her favorite meal. Family photos lined the walls, capturing moments she had missed, the kids' school pictures, Caleb's new drawing, Rosie's crafts. Each image was a reminder of the time that had slipped by while she was away. After dinner, once the kids were tucked into bed and the house had settled into a peaceful quiet, CLA and Derek sat together on the couch, the soft glow of the fireplace illuminating the room. CLA leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder, her thoughts heavy but calm. "Do you ever feel like you're not sure where you belong?" she asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Derek glanced down at her, his brow furrowing slightly. "What do you mean?" I mean, I love being home, being with you and the kids, but part of me feels different, like I've changed, and I don't know how to fit back into this life. Derek was quiet for a moment, his hand gently stroking her hair. You don't have to fit back in, CLA. You're allowed to change. And this life we have, it's not rigid. It can change with you. CLA felt her throat tighten, a swell of emotion rising in her chest. She had spent so much time trying to figure out how to slip back into her old life, as though she could simply pick up where she had left off. But Derek was right. She didn't have to force herself into an old mold. She could create something new, something that fit who she had become. I think I want to reach out to Lily, she said after a long pause. See if there's something I can do with her organization. I don't know what it would look like, but I feel like I need to be part of something bigger than myself. I need to help people again, but in a different way. Derek smiled, nodding in agreement. I think that's a great idea. You'd be amazing at it. CLA exhaled, realizing she had been holding her breath. The decision wasn't final, and there was still so much she didn't know. But for the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of direction, a glimmer of purpose that had nothing to do with orders or duty. That night, as she lay in bed, listening to the soft sounds of her family sleeping around her, CLA felt a peace she hadn't felt in years. She didn't have all the answers yet, and there would still be challenges ahead. But for the first time, she was ready to face them, not as Sergeant CLA Reynolds, but as a woman with a new mission, one rooted in compassion, healing, and a desire to make a difference in the lives of others. This was her new path. This was her new purpose, and she was ready to embrace it. Morning sunlight streamed through the window, bathing the room in a soft, golden light as CLA lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the quiet hum of the house, the gentle creaks of wood expanding in the morning warmth, felt different today. The world around her was familiar, but something within her had shifted. She wasn't the same person she'd been before she left. The weight of her experiences had settled into her bones, leaving her with a lingering question she couldn't ignore. What comes next? Careful not to disturb Derek, she slipped out of bed and made her way down the hallway, peeking into the kids' rooms. She watched them sleep. Caleb sprawled across his bed, his arm draped over his stuffed dinosaur, and Rosie curled up, barely visible beneath her mountain of stuffed animals. CLA smiled to herself, feeling a warmth rise in her chest that no battle could take from her. She'd fought for moments like these, quiet, tender mornings with her family, but now, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was something else calling her, a new purpose beyond the walls of her home. She made her way downstairs, brewed a pot of coffee, and sat at the kitchen table, her mind racing with thoughts of Lily and the nonprofit for veterans. Reaching out to Lily had been her first thought, but she hesitated, unsure of how to begin this unfamiliar journey. The military had always provided structure, a clear path forward. Now, without it, she felt adrift, floating in a space of possibilities that both excited and terrified her. Just as she began to second-guess herself, she felt the weight of her phone in her hand. She pulled out Lily's card, her thumb hovering over the phone number printed in bold. Homeward Bound, it read. The simplicity of the name resonated deeply with her. Taking a deep breath, she dialed the number before she could talk herself out of it. The phone rang twice before a cheerful voice answered. This is Lily. Hi, Lily, it's CLA. From the flight, she said, her voice wavering slightly as she wondered if Lily would remember her. Lily's voice immediately brightened, as though she'd been waiting for this call. CLA, I'm so glad you called. How are you feeling? How was the reunion with your family? CLA couldn't help but smile at the warmth in Lily's voice. It was everything I hoped for, but it's also strange. Coming back. I didn't realize how much I changed until I walked through the front door. Believe me, I get it, Lily replied, her tone laced with understanding. It's hard to reintegrate after something as intense as deployment. But that's part of why I started Homeward Bound, to give people a place to figure it out. You don't have to do it alone. CLA nodded, feeling a surge of gratitude that someone outside her world understood. I've been thinking a lot about what we talked about on the plane, she admitted, about helping other veterans. I don't know what it would look like, but I feel like it's something I need to do. Lily's voice softened, and CLA could almost hear the smile on her face. You know, I had a feeling our conversation wasn't just a one-time thing. Why don't you come by our office sometime this week? No pressure, just a chance to see what we're about, meet some of the team, and get a feel for what we do. CLA hesitated, her mind racing with all the reasons she wasn't ready. She was still finding her footing, still carrying her own weight. But Lily's invitation felt like a door opening, a bridge between the world she had left behind and the one she was stepping into. Okay, CLA said, her voice firmer than she expected. I'd like that. Great. How about Wednesday at 10? I'll introduce you to everyone, and we can go from there. No expectations, just an opportunity to see if it feels right. The relief in Lily's voice was evident, and CLA felt a small spark of excitement ignite within her. She hadn't realized just how much she'd needed this reassurance, this gentle push into something new. That sounds good. I'll be there. After hanging up, CLA sat for a moment, letting the reality of her decision sink in. She had taken the first step, and while it was small, it was something. It wasn't just about finding a new job or filling the time now that she was home. It was about rediscovering herself, finding a way to use everything she had learned in service of something meaningful. For the next few days, CLA threw herself into family life, savoring each moment with Caleb and Rosie, who seemed determined to make up for all the time they'd missed with her. She played board games, sat through tea parties with Rosie wearing her sparkly crown, and helped Caleb with his science project, soaking in the warmth of home. But in the quiet moments, her thoughts drifted back to Wednesday, to the unknown that awaited her at Homeward Bound. The nerves were still there, but so was the pull. The feeling that this was the direction she needed to take. On Wednesday morning, CLA found herself standing in front of the mirror, smoothing down the hem of her blouse, trying to steady her nerves. She was usually calm and collected, the kind of person who could keep a cool head under pressure. But today felt different. This wasn't a mission with a clear objective. This was a step into the unknown, and it carried a weight she hadn't anticipated. Taking a deep breath, she grabbed her jacket and headed out the door, the brisk morning air filling her lungs with a sense of renewal. The drive to the Homeward Bound office was short, but it gave her time to reflect on what this meeting could mean. She wasn't just visiting a nonprofit. She was stepping into a new chapter, one that could redefine her sense of purpose. The Homeward Bound office was nestled in a renovated building downtown, its exterior modern yet inviting, with large windows that let in streams of natural light. As CLA walked up the steps, she felt a mixture of anticipation and trepidation, like a soldier stepping into unknown territory. But the energy of the place was warm, welcoming. Veterans of all ages were scattered around the lobby, some deep in conversation, others working on projects. There was a sense of community here, a palpable spirit of belonging that put her at ease. CLA. Lily's voice called out from across the room, breaking her thoughts. She waved, her face lighting up with the same infectious enthusiasm she'd had on the plane. I'm so glad you're here. Come on. I'll introduce you to the team. They walked through the bustling office, and CLA felt herself relax as Lily introduced her to the staff. Veterans like herself, people who had been through the fire and come out the other side with a drive to make a difference. There was a camaraderie here that reminded her of the military but without the rigidity, a sense of purpose that was as strong as any mission she'd been given. Lily led her into a small conference room where a group of veterans had gathered for a discussion session. The topic was reintegration, how to navigate the challenges of returning to civilian life after years of service. CLA listened quietly, absorbing the stories shared by those around her, each one echoing pieces of her own experience. Some were struggling with PTSD, others with finding meaningful work, and some simply missed the sense of purpose the military had given them. One man, a former Marine named Jake, spoke up, his voice laced with frustration. It's like everything just feels smaller now. Out there, every day was life or death. Now I'm back, and people are worried about their coffee orders or the traffic. It just feels insignificant. CLA felt a pang of recognition. She had felt that same disconnect, the sense that the world she had returned to couldn't possibly understand the weight of her experiences. But as she listened, she realized that this was exactly why Homeward Bound existed, to bridge that gap, to help veterans find meaning again in a world that seemed to have moved on without them. After the session, Lily turned to her with a gentle smile. What did you think? CLA paused, searching for the right words. It was powerful, I can see how important this is. There's so much that people don't understand about what it's like to come home after serving. It's not just about getting a job or finding a place to live. It's about finding a new purpose. I think that's what I've been struggling with, too. Lily's smile softened, her eyes warm with understanding. That's exactly it. It's about finding a way to take everything you've experienced and use it to build something new. Something meaningful. CLA glanced around the room, taking in the faces of the veterans who had shared their stories, their vulnerabilities. For the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of belonging, a feeling that maybe, just maybe, she had found her people. This was a place where her experiences mattered, where her voice could make a difference. A spark of possibility ignited within her, and she realized that this wasn't just a meeting. This was the start of something deeper, a path that might lead her not just to healing, but to a purpose that was uniquely her own. And as she looked at Lily, she saw a future unfolding before her, one where she could give back, where she could help others find their way, just as Lily had helped her. CLA took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her decision settle into something steady, something right. I think I'd like to get involved," she said, her voice filled with quiet determination. Lily's face lit up, and she reached over to squeeze CLA's hand. "Welcome to the team, CLA. I have a feeling you're going to make a difference here." In that moment, surrounded by people who understood, who saw her not just as a soldier but as someone with the power to help, CLA felt the first flicker of peace. For the first time since she had left the battlefield, she felt a sense of direction, a purpose that was both familiar and new, and she knew, deep in her heart, that this was only the beginning. The next few days passed in a blur of family breakfasts, morning school drop-offs, and quiet afternoons where CLA found herself on the porch, watching the world go by as she processed this new chapter unfolding in her life. The air was crisp with the smell of autumn, a reminder of how much she'd missed these little moments. Yet, despite the warmth of home, her mind kept drifting back to her first meeting at Homeward Bound and the veterans whose stories mirrored her own. On Monday morning, she found herself standing once again outside the Homeward Bound office. The building, a renovated space with large windows and a sleek, welcoming design, radiated the kind of energy that was both purposeful and healing. As CLA walked up the steps, she noticed the people passing by, a mix of veterans and civilians, all moving with a sense of purpose, the quiet resilience she recognized in herself. Lily greeted her at the entrance with a bright smile, waving her over as if she were an old friend. "CLA, I'm so glad you're back," she said, her voice as warm and genuine as ever. "Come on. There's someone I want you to meet." Lily led her down a hallway and into a small room filled with couches and chairs arranged in a circle. The walls were adorned with artwork made by veterans, each piece a blend of raw emotion and resilience. The room was quiet, except for the soft murmur of conversations and the occasional laugh from the group gathered there. CLA felt a calm settle over her, a sense that she was in a place where people understood, where there was no need to explain the weight she carried. "This is our weekly group session," Lily explained. "It's a space where veterans can share their experiences, their struggles, and support each other in ways only they can understand. We're lucky to have an incredible group today." She gestured to an empty seat beside her. "Would you like to join?" CLA hesitated, feeling the familiar pang of discomfort that came with opening up, especially in front of strangers. But the gentle encouragement in Lily's gaze urged her on, and after a beat, CLA nodded, taking the seat and settling in. The session began with a man named Jake, a former Marine in his 40s with a serious face and hands that fidgeted as he spoke. "I don't know how to explain it," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "But coming back, it feels like I'm still out there. You know? Like part of me never left. I see people worrying about things that seem so small, and I can't help but feel out of place. Every day, I feel like I'm watching life from the sidelines, unable to jump back in." CLA felt his words resonate deep within her. She had felt that same disconnection, the feeling that no one else could understand what it was like to live with one foot in a world of calm and the other in memories laced with chaos. She glanced around the circle and saw the same understanding reflected in the faces of others, each nodding slightly, each knowing exactly what Jake meant. Another woman, Mia, a young former medic with soft eyes and a quiet voice, spoke up next. "It's hard for me too. I thought once I came back to feel normal, but every loud noise, every crowded room, it all brings me right back. And I'm so tired of pretending I'm okay when I'm not. The vulnerability in Mia's voice struck CLA, and for a moment, she felt the familiar urge to hide her own scars, to keep her experiences tucked safely away. But in this space, surrounded by others who were bravely sharing their own struggles, she felt a shift within herself. This wasn't just a place for them to vent. It was a place for them to heal, to slowly piece together the fragments of their lives. Taking a breath, CLA spoke up. I think we all feel like that, like the world just went on without us while we were out there. But maybe that's why places like this matter so much. We can help each other remember who we were before, and who we can be now. The room grew quiet as her words settled over the group. And for the first time in a long time, CLA felt a weight lift. It was a small step, but it was real, and she could feel the room's collective understanding. A silent acknowledgement that they were all on this journey together. The session continued, and one by one, people shared their stories, each one adding to the tapestry of experiences and resilience. When the session ended, CLA felt a profound sense of connection, the kind she had thought only existed in the close-knit bonds of her squad. But here, amidst the quiet courage of fellow veterans, she realized she had found a new kind of camaraderie. After the session, Lily approached her with a knowing smile. How was that? CLA exhaled, still feeling the weight of the emotions stirred during the meeting. It was intense, she admitted, but in a good way. I didn't realize how much I needed to hear others' stories. It's like they're holding a mirror up to my own experience. Lily's expression softened. That's exactly why we do this. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can offer each other is simply the space to be understood. There's so much strength in sharing, in knowing you're not alone. CLA nodded, feeling a quiet gratitude that went beyond words. Thank you, Lily, for giving me the chance to be a part of this. Anytime, Lily replied. And I have a feeling you're going to be a powerful presence here. You bring a calmness, a grounded energy that others are drawn to. If you're up for it, I'd love for you to join us more often, maybe even help lead some of the sessions in the future. The suggestion took CLA by surprise. She hadn't seen herself as anything more than a participant, a quiet observer. But Lily's confidence in her, her belief that CLA could be more than just another veteran finding her way, sparked something within her. The idea of guiding others, of helping them navigate the maze of reintegration, was both daunting and strangely appealing. Let me think about it, CLA said, her voice filled with an excitement she hadn't expected. Of course, Lily replied with a smile. Just know that you'd be incredible at it. As CLA left Homeward Bound that day, she felt lighter, like the weight of her memories had softened, if only a little. The voices she had heard, the faces she had seen, they were etched in her mind, each one a reminder that she wasn't alone in this journey. Driving home, she couldn't stop thinking about the possibilities that lay before her. It was no longer just about surviving. It was about finding a purpose, a new mission that would give her life a depth and meaning beyond the battlefield. She had found something she didn't even know she was looking for. A community, a sense of belonging, and the glimmer of a path forward. When she got home, Derek was waiting for her on the porch, a warm smile lighting up his face. How was it? He asked as she climbed the steps to join him. CLA looked out over the familiar streets of her neighborhood, feeling a profound sense of peace settle over her. It was good, more than good, actually. Feels like I might have found something real there, something that matters. Derek nodded, reaching out to take her hand. I'm glad, CLA. You deserve to feel that. They sat together in comfortable silence, the cool evening air wrapping around them. CLA felt the weight of the day settle into her bones. A weight that no longer felt like a burden, but a kind of purpose. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she was exactly where she needed to be, standing at the edge of something new, ready to take the next step, not as a soldier, but as a woman with a heart full of compassion and a desire to make a difference. And as the stars began to appear in the night sky, CLA knew that this was just the beginning of a journey she was finally ready to embrace. A week later, CLA returned to Homeward Bound, her pulse quickening as she parked outside the building. She had agreed to help lead her first discussion group today, a small gathering of veterans just beginning their journeys toward healing. The thought filled her with both excitement and doubt. She had always been a leader in the field, someone her squad could rely on in the chaos of combat. But here, this was different. Here, her strength wasn't in physical endurance or tactical skills, it was in her ability to understand, to empathize. The morning air was crisp, and she took a deep breath, steadying herself before walking through the doors. As soon as she stepped inside, the familiar warmth of the place washed over her, along with the quiet buzz of conversation and laughter from the veterans and staff mingling in the lobby. It was a humbling reminder of why she was here, and what this place represented: a safe haven, a space where everyone's story mattered. Lily met her in the hallway, giving her a quick, encouraging squeeze on the shoulder. "You ready?" she asked, her eyes filled with a warmth that put CLA instantly at ease. CLA smiled, feeling her confidence settle. "I think so." They walked together to the room where the group would be meeting, a cozy space with comfortable chairs arranged in a circle. The walls were adorned with photographs and artwork created by veterans, each piece a small but powerful testament to resilience and survival. CLA took her seat, her heart pounding with a mix of anticipation and nerves as the veterans began to file in, each one carrying their own weight, their own struggles. As the last person sat down, Lily gave her a nod, signaling her to begin. CLA took a deep breath, looking around the circle at the faces staring back at her. Some wary, some curious, all of them seeking something they couldn't quite name. "Hi, everyone," she began, her voice steady but warm. "My name is CLA. I'm a veteran, like most of you, and I know that coming back, it's not always easy. You think you'll fit right back into your old life, but sometimes, it feels like you're living in a different world entirely." A few heads nodded, the recognition flickering in their eyes giving her courage to continue. She wasn't speaking as a leader or a teacher, but as someone who had walked in their shoes, who understood the complexities and struggles that came with returning home. "We all carry things," she continued, her voice softening, "things that people around us may never see, and sometimes, it feels easier to bury them, to pretend they aren't there. But I'm learning that when we face those parts of ourselves, we can find healing, together." This place, Homeward Bound, isn't just about helping you get through today. It's about finding your purpose, your path forward. There was a silence as her words hung in the air, the weight of them settling over the group. Then, one of the men, a young veteran named Miguel, spoke up, his voice hesitant. "I feel like I lost a part of myself out there. I used to be easygoing, the guy who would always be up for a laugh. But now," he trailed off, his gaze fixed on the floor, "now, I don't even recognize myself." CLA nodded, her heart aching with a familiar pain. "I get that, Miguel. Sometimes, it feels like the person you were before is a stranger. But you're still here. The experiences you've had, they're a part of you. But they don't have to define all of you. You can find new parts of yourself, ones that are stronger, more resilient." Miguel looked up, his eyes meeting hers with a mixture of surprise and gratitude. She could see the hope slowly creeping back into his expression, a reminder that he wasn't alone. Across from him, an older man named Ray, who had served in Vietnam, shifted in his seat. "You know, I've been to a lot of these groups over the years," he said gruffly, his gaze intense. "And sometimes, I still don't know if talking about it helps. But there's something about this place." He looked around, his eyes lingering on each person in the room. "It feels like home, in a way, like we're all in this together." CLA's heart swelled at his words, a reminder of why she had been drawn to this place. Homeward Bound wasn't just an organization. It was a community, a family built on shared pain and shared strength. She spent the next hour listening to their stories, their fears, and their hopes. With each word, the tension in the room seemed to ease, the walls they had built around themselves slowly beginning to crumble. By the end of the session, there was a quiet sense of relief, a lightness that hadn't been there before. When the group ended, people lingered, sharing quiet words of encouragement, a pat on the shoulder, a nod of understanding. CLA watched them with a sense of pride and fulfillment, feeling the impact of what they had shared. This was what healing looked like: small, gradual, a journey made step by step, not alone but with others beside you. As the last veteran left the room, Lily walked over, her eyes bright with admiration. CLA, you were incredible. I knew you'd bring something special to this place. But you surpassed every expectation. CLA felt a blush rise to her cheeks, and used to such praise. I don't know. I just spoke from the heart. And that's exactly what makes you perfect for this. Lily replied. People can tell when you're being real. It's what draws them in, makes them trust you. You're a natural. CLA felt a warmth in her chest, a quiet sense of pride she hadn't felt in a long time. She had always been a leader on the battlefield. But this, helping others through their inner battles, felt like something deeper, something that reached beyond the physical. As she walked out of the building that day, she felt the sunlight warm on her face, filling her with a renewed sense of purpose. She knew this path wouldn't always be easy, that there would be days when the memories felt heavy, days when she'd question if she was strong enough to carry others' pain along with her own. But for the first time, she felt she had found something that was hers, something that could give her life a new meaning beyond the military. That evening, she sat with Derek on the porch, watching as the sky faded from gold to deep blue, the stars blinking into view one by one. She told him about the group, about Miguel and Ray and the other veterans who had opened their hearts in that small, sacred space. Derek listened quietly, his arm wrapped around her shoulders. You know, he said softly, I haven't seen you this at peace in a long time. CLA leaned into him, letting the comfort of his presence wash over her. It's strange, isn't it? I thought leaving the military would be the hardest part, that I'd feel lost without it. But it turns out, there's a different kind of strength in helping others find their way. Derek looked at her, his eyes filled with pride. I always knew you'd find your way, CLA. I just didn't know it would be this. They sat in comfortable silence, the quiet sounds of the night surrounding them. For the first time, CLA felt that she was exactly where she needed to be, not on a battlefield, not in a uniform, but here, in the space she had carved out for herself. A space where she could be both strong and vulnerable, a guide for others as they made their way home. And as she gazed up at the stars, she knew her journey was far from over. She was just beginning to understand the depths of her own strength, a strength rooted not in fighting, but in healing, in guiding others toward the light. And with that realization, she felt a peace settle over her, a quiet assurance that whatever came next, she was ready. In the weeks that followed, CLA found herself settling into her new role at Homeward Bound, stepping further into the role of a guide, a mentor, and, in some ways, a beacon for other veterans. She arrived early, stayed late, and poured herself into every group session, every one-on-one conversation, with a focus she hadn't felt since her days in the military. This place, this purpose, it filled a part of her that had been hollowed out by years of service, part she'd thought would never heal. One Thursday afternoon, she was leading a session with a group of veterans who had just joined Homeward Bound. Each one was at a different point in their journey, carrying a weight they couldn't yet name, and her heart ached for them. She knew what it was like to feel lost, adrift in a world that no longer felt like home. As they gathered in a circle, she looked around at the faces staring back at her, some guarded, others hopeful, all of them searching for a way forward. Today, I want us to talk about the idea of purpose, CLA began, her voice gentle but steady. I know that's a big word, and maybe even a scary one. A lot of us spent our lives in the military, where purpose was handed to us. It was about following orders, completing missions. But now, she paused, letting the silence hang for a moment. Now we have to find that purpose within ourselves. It's not easy, but it's possible. A young man named Travis, who had been quiet since joining the group, shifted in his seat. He was barely 25, his face lined with worry that looked out of place on someone so young. How? He asked, his voice almost a whisper. How do you just make a new purpose? The military was everything to me. It was where I belonged. And now, his voice trailed off, filled with the weight of something he couldn't fully express. CLA met his gaze, her own memories flickering to the surface. She knew that feeling well, the disorientation, the sense that without the structure of the military, she was simply floating. I get it, Travis, she said softly. I felt the same way, but I've started to realize something. Purpose isn't always one thing. It doesn't have to be a grand mission or a title. Sometimes, purpose is simply being here, showing up, and taking each day as it comes. It's helping the person next to you, or letting yourself heal. Travis nodded slowly, his eyes reflecting a spark of understanding. Across from him, a woman named Anita, a Navy veteran with a calm yet intense presence, chimed in. For me, it was about finding small things. I started volunteering with a local shelter, just doing small tasks, and little by little, it gave me a sense of value, like I was contributing to something again. CLA felt a wave of pride as she listened, seeing the strength in Anita's words and the impact they were having on the rest of the group. Here they were, strangers bonded by a shared experience, offering each other fragments of hope that might one day add up to something whole. The session continued, each veteran sharing small victories and setbacks, their voices weaving together in a powerful tapestry of resilience. By the time the session ended, the air in the room felt lighter, as if they had all exhaled a collective breath they'd been holding for too long. As the group filed out, CLA stayed behind to gather her notes. She was deep in thought when Lily entered, her usual bright energy softened by the seriousness in her eyes. CLA, she began, a small smile on her face. I've been watching you these past few weeks. The way you connect with everyone. The way you've brought out stories I didn't think some of them would ever share. It's incredible. CLA felt a blush rise in her cheeks, still unaccustomed to such praise. I'm just trying to help, she replied, feeling both grateful and humbled. Well, you're doing a lot more than that, Lily continued, her tone growing serious. I know this might feel sudden, but I'd like to offer you a permanent position here at Homeward Bound. You've been a volunteer up until now, but we need someone like you full-time, someone who can lead, who can inspire. Think about it, no pressure. But I'd be thrilled if you said yes. CLA's heart raced, her mind spinning with possibilities. A full-time position? The idea filled her with both excitement and a sense of responsibility that felt almost sacred. She had always seen herself as a soldier, a leader on the field. But here, in this space, she was something more, a guide, a friend, someone others looked to for hope. Thank you, Lily, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I'll definitely think about it. It's a lot to take in. Lily smiled, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Take all the time you need, but just know, you're already part of this family. Whether you're here as a volunteer or as staff, you've made a difference. CLA nodded, feeling the full weight of Lily's words settle in her chest. This wasn't just a job, it was a calling, a purpose that felt as powerful as any mission she'd ever undertaken. That night, CLA lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her mind replaying the events of the day, the veterans she'd spoken to, the stories they'd shared, the weight of the responsibility Lily had offered her. It all swirled in her mind, filling her with a mix of hope and trepidation. This was a chance to build something lasting, something that could help others in ways she'd never imagined. But could she truly take on that responsibility? Was she ready to embrace this new chapter with everything she had? In the quiet darkness, Derek stirred beside her. Sensing her restlessness, he turned to her, his voice warm and steady. Can't sleep, CLA sighed, her gaze softening as she looked at him. Lily offered me a full-time position today, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Derek's eyes widened with surprise, followed by a gentle smile. That's amazing, CLA. You deserve it. She nodded slowly, her heart filled with equal parts excitement and uncertainty. But it's a lot, Derek. I'm not sure if I'm ready for it. It's a commitment, a whole new world. What if I'm not enough? Derek reached over, taking her hand in his touch grounding her. CLA, you've led people through war. You've faced things most of us can't even imagine. And you're here, helping people heal. If anyone is strong enough to do this, it's you. And I'll be here, every step of the way. His words settled over her like a bomb, easing the doubts swirling in her mind. She realized that this wasn't just about being ready. It was about choosing to step forward, to take a chance on herself and on the lives she could help change. The following morning, she arrived at Homeward Bound with a sense of purpose. Feeling the weight of her decision lift as she walked through the doors, she spotted Lily waiting in the hallway, her expression a mixture of hope and encouragement. CLA took a deep breath, her voice steady as she spoke. I'd like to accept the position, Lily. A grin broke across Lily's face, and she pulled CLA into a hug. "Welcome aboard, CLA. We're going to do amazing things together." As CLA settled into her new role, she found herself growing more confident with each passing day. She led group sessions, met with veterans one-on-one, and even started brainstorming new programs with Lily to support those still struggling. It was challenging, yes, but each story, each life she touched, reminded her of why she had chosen this path. And as the weeks turned into months, CLA felt something she hadn't felt in years. A deep, abiding sense of purpose. It wasn't the same as the military, but it was no less important. She was building a legacy, not of battle, but of healing, of hope. She was helping others find their way back to themselves, one step at a time. For the first time, CLA knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. And in that knowledge, she found a peace that no uniform, no rank, could ever provide. She was home. Over the following months, CLA's role at Homeward Bound deepened, her presence becoming a vital part of the organization. She took on more responsibilities, overseeing group sessions, coordinating outreach programs, and even working with local businesses to create job opportunities for veterans. Every day, she poured herself into her work, channeling her passion into building a place where veterans could truly feel seen and supported. One crisp autumn afternoon, CLA found herself in Lily's office, discussing a new initiative. Lily had noticed an increasing number of veterans who were struggling not only with mental health challenges but also with practical issues like housing, stable employment, and family reintegration. She wanted to launch a comprehensive program that would address all these areas in a holistic way. "It's ambitious," CLA said, a smile tugging at her lips as she flipped through the proposal. "But I think it's exactly what they need. It's more than just support. It's giving them the tools to rebuild their lives." Lily nodded, her eyes filled with excitement. "That's exactly the point. And you're the perfect person to lead this, CLA. You know what it's like, the balance between hope and despair. I can think of no one better to build something that gives people a sense of direction." CLA's heart swelled at Lily's confidence in her. The project was no small feat and the weight of responsibility felt daunting. But for once, she didn't feel overwhelmed. She felt inspired. Every step she'd taken, every decision she'd made since leaving the military, had led her here, to a place where she could build something transformative, something that could impact lives far beyond her own. That evening, she shared the news with Derek over dinner. The kids were busy with their own meals, Caleb chattering about school projects while Rosie played with her food, giggling as she tried to make shapes out of her mashed potatoes. CLA glanced at them, her heart warmed by their innocence, and turned to Derek, her voice laced with excitement. "They're letting me lead the new program," she said, unable to keep the pride from her voice. "It's going to be huge: job training, mental health resources, even family counseling. We're going to help veterans reintegrate in a real, sustainable way." Derek's eyes lit up, his smile wide and genuine. "CLA, that's incredible. I'm so proud of you. I knew you'd find your way." She reached across the table, taking his hand, feeling the quiet strength of his support. "Thank you, Derek. I couldn't have done this without you and the kids. You've been my anchor." As they continued their meal, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment that went beyond words. She was no longer just working to keep herself afloat. She was building something that could change lives. It was the kind of purpose she'd always dreamed of, the kind of purpose that felt as vital as breathing. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of planning and preparation. CLA threw herself into the project, meeting with community leaders, veterans' families, mental health professionals, and local businesses who were eager to support the cause. The work was challenging and the days long, but each step forward felt like a victory. She was no longer haunted by the ghosts of her past. Instead, she was driven by the hope she saw in others, by the lives she was helping to rebuild. One day, while reviewing the new program materials, CLA heard a soft knock on her office door. She looked up to see Miguel standing there, shifting nervously from foot to foot. Since joining the group, Miguel had come a long way, but there was still a vulnerability in his gaze, a lingering uncertainty that he carried with him. "Hey, Miguel," she said, motioning him to come in. "What's up?" He stepped inside, taking a seat across from her, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. I wanted to thank you," he said, his voice quiet but sincere. "I don't think I'd be where I am now if it weren't for this place. For you. You helped me see that there's still something worth fighting for." CLA felt a lump form in her throat, a deep, bittersweet pride filling her chest. Moments like these reminded her of why she had taken on this work, why she dedicated herself to helping others find their way back to themselves. "Miguel, you did the hard work. I was just here to remind you that you're not alone," she replied, her voice soft. "But I'm proud of you, really. You're building something new for yourself. And that's one of the hardest things anyone can do." He nodded, a small smile breaking through the tension in his face. "It's still hard, you know? But knowing that there's a place like this, it helps. You've given us all something we didn't know we needed. A chance to feel normal again." CLA watched him leave, her heart swelling with both pride and humility. It was moments like this that reminded her why she was here, why every late night, every challenging conversation, was worth it. She was creating a space where people could feel whole again, a place where they didn't have to hide their scars. As winter approached, the new program was officially launched. They called it New Horizons, a name that symbolized fresh starts, resilience, and the belief that even after darkness, there was always light. The launch event was packed, the room filled with veterans, their families, and community members who had supported Homeward Bound from the beginning. CLA stood at the front of the room, facing a sea of familiar faces, her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and pride. She glanced at Lily, who gave her an encouraging nod, and then at Derek, who was standing at the back with Caleb and Rosie, their smiles filling her with a strength she hadn't known she possessed. Taking a deep breath, she began. "Thank you all for being here today. When I first joined Homeward Bound, I was searching for my own purpose, my own path forward. I thought I was just here to volunteer, to lend a helping hand. But what I found was so much more than that. I found a family, a community that reminded me that I didn't have to carry my burdens alone." The room was silent, each person hanging on her words, each one understanding the weight they carried. This program, New Horizons, is about more than just finding jobs or offering therapy. It's about rebuilding lives. It's about giving each person who walks through our doors the chance to rediscover themselves, to find hope in a world that doesn't always understand the battles they've faced. Together, we're creating something powerful, something that will last. Applause filled the room, and CLA felt a surge of pride and gratitude. She had found her place, her purpose, and now she was sharing it with others, building something that would live on far beyond her time here. As the applause quieted, a familiar face stepped forward from the crowd. It was Ray, the Vietnam veteran who had been a regular in her group sessions since she'd first started. He held a plaque in his hands, his voice a little unsteady as he spoke. "CLA," he began, his voice rough but filled with emotion. "We wanted to give you this, for everything you've done, for the hope you've given all of us. You're not just a leader, you're family." CLA's hands shook as she took the plaque, her eyes blurring with tears as she read the words engraved on it. "To CLA, for your strength, your compassion, and the light you bring into our lives. Thank you for helping us find our way home." The room erupted into applause once more, and CLA found herself surrounded by hugs, handshakes, and words of gratitude from the veterans and families who had been touched by her work. It was overwhelming, humbling, and as she looked around the room, she knew that this was more than a job or a role. It was a legacy, one built on compassion, resilience, and the belief that no one had to walk this path alone. Later that night, as she sat with her family around the dinner table, the plaque resting beside her, CLA felt a peace settle over her like never before. She had found her purpose, her mission, and in doing so, she had not only transformed her own life but had become a beacon for others, a guiding light for those searching for their way back. In that quiet moment, surrounded by her loved ones and the echoes of the day's celebrations, CLA knew one thing for certain. This was her life's work, not in combat, not in service to a country, but in service to the people who had fought, who had suffered, and who, with her help, were finding their way back to the light. This was her purpose. This was her home. The days following the launch of New Horizons were a whirlwind of activity, filled with meetings, workshops, and visits to local businesses interested in supporting veterans. CLA threw herself into the work with a passion that surprised even her. She was no longer just helping individuals. She was building a network, a web of support that extended beyond the walls of Homeward Bound and into the community itself. Every small success felt like a victory, a step toward a future where veterans could find not just jobs, but belonging and purpose. One morning, as she sat in her office reviewing program updates, Lily knocked on the door, peeking her head inside with an excited smile. "CLA, you're going to want to hear this," she said, her eyes sparkling. "What's going on?" CLA asked, intrigued by Lily's enthusiasm. "Remember the city council meeting we attended a few weeks back? Well, they approved our proposal. They want to partner with us to expand New Horizons citywide. They're offering funding, space, even resources to help us reach more veterans." CLA's jaw dropped, her mind racing as she processed the news. "Are you serious? This could change everything." Lily nodded, practically beaming. "It's happening, CLA. What you've built here, it's resonating with people. The city council sees the impact, and they want to be part of it." The realization hit her like a wave. This program, this purpose she had found, was growing beyond anything she had imagined. It was no longer just a small project. It was becoming a movement, a chance to change lives on a scale she had never thought possible. "I don't know what to say," CLA murmured, her voice filled with emotion. This is why I started all of this, to make a difference that goes beyond these walls." Lily leaned in, her smile softening with pride. "CLA, you've done more than make a difference. You've given people hope. And now, you have the chance to reach even more veterans, to change even more lives." The rest of the day passed in a blur of excitement and planning as CLA and Lily worked to prepare for the expansion. They coordinated with city officials, reached out to potential partners, and began laying the groundwork for a citywide initiative that would provide veterans with access to job training, mental health resources, housing assistance, and family support. The possibilities felt endless, each one a step closer to building a community where veterans could truly thrive. A week later, CLA found herself standing in front of a packed auditorium at a city council press conference, the room buzzing with anticipation. Representatives from local media outlets, community leaders, and veterans had all gathered to hear the official announcement of the New Horizons expansion. CLA glanced at the podium, feeling a rush of nerves she hadn't felt in years. Derek was sitting in the front row with Caleb and Rosie, their faces filled with pride and encouragement. She took a steadying breath, her gaze meeting Derek's, and felt his silent reassurance bolster her confidence. She was ready, stepping up to the podium. CLA looked out over the crowd, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and gratitude. This was her chance to share the vision that had driven her for so long, the mission she had found in the quiet spaces between the battlefield and the life she had built back home. "Thank you all for being here today," she began, her voice clear and steady. "When I left the military, I felt lost. Like many veterans, I returned home with memories that were difficult to carry, scars that others couldn't see. I thought I'd left my purpose behind on the battlefield. But I was wrong. Through my work at Homeward Bound, I found a new mission, a mission to help veterans like me find their way home, not just to a place, but to a sense of belonging." She paused, letting her words sink in, feeling the weight of the moment. "Today, we're expanding New Horizons to reach veterans across the city, giving them access to the resources they need to build new lives, to heal, and to thrive. This isn't just about jobs or housing. It's about creating a community where every veteran feels valued, where every story matters." A ripple of applause moved through the crowd, and CLA felt a surge of pride as she continued. "This program is a testament to the resilience of veterans and the power of community. I am humbled and honored to be part of this journey, and I am grateful for the city's support in helping us reach more lives." The applause grew, filling the room with a sense of unity and purpose. CLA stepped back from the podium, her heart full, knowing that this moment was more than a milestone. It was a promise of what was to come. After the press conference, CLA was surrounded by people eager to shake her hand, share their support, and express their excitement for the expansion. Among them were veterans who had been part of her group sessions, faces she recognized from Homeward Bound, each one a reminder of the lives she had touched. Ray, the Vietnam veteran who had given her the plaque months before, approached her with a broad smile, his eyes shining with pride. CLA, you've made us all proud. You're showing the world what veterans are capable of, what we're all capable of. CLA felt a lump form in her throat, overwhelmed by his words. Thank you, Ray. I couldn't have done any of this without you and everyone else at Homeward Bound. You all inspire me every day. He nodded, his gaze steady. Just remember, CLA, this isn't the end. This is just the beginning. As winter deepened, the expansion of New Horizons began to take shape. New centers opened across the city, each one offering veterans access to resources, counseling, job placement, and a network of people who understood their journey. CLA traveled between locations, meeting with veterans, helping staff set up programs, and ensuring that each center embodied the same warmth and support as Homeward Bound. One evening, as she wrapped up a meeting with a group of newly hired counselors, she received a text from Lily. "Meet me in the main office when you're done. I have something to show you." Intrigued, CLA made her way back to Homeward Bound, where she found Lily waiting in the conference room, a file spread out in front of her. "What's this?" CLA asked, taking a seat across from her. Lily's eyes sparkled with excitement as she handed over the file. "This, CLA, is the next step. The city wants us to expand New Horizons statewide. They believe in what we're doing, and they want every veteran in the state to have access to our resources." CLA stared at the file, her heart pounding as she flipped through the pages. The scale of the project was staggering, but the vision was clear. A network of centers across the state, each one dedicated to supporting veterans in every aspect of their lives. It was a vision that went beyond anything she had imagined when she first walked through the doors of Homeward Bound. "This is incredible," CLA said, her voice filled with awe. "We could reach so many people, make such a huge impact." Lily nodded, her gaze warm. "And we couldn't do it without you, CLA. You've turned this vision into a reality. The state wants to fund it, but they want you to lead it. They want you to be the face of New Horizons." CLA felt the weight of the offer settle over her, a mixture of pride, responsibility, and excitement. This was a chance to build something lasting, to create a legacy that would help veterans for generations to come. After a long pause, she looked at Lily, her voice filled with quiet determination. "Let's do it." The months that followed were filled with late nights, long meetings, and endless planning sessions, but each day brought CLA closer to her vision. The expansion took shape, one center at a time, each one a beacon of hope and support for veterans and their families. And as the program grew, so did her sense of purpose, her understanding of what it meant to serve not in combat, but in compassion, in connection, in building a community. On the day the first statewide center opened, CLA stood before the doors, surrounded by veterans, community leaders, and her family. She took a deep breath, looking out over the crowd, feeling the weight of their expectations and their hope. Derek stood beside her, his hand on her shoulder, Caleb and Rosie beaming with pride. With a smile, she opened the doors, stepping inside the new center, the future of New Horizons unfolding before her. It was a future built on resilience, on the belief that no veteran had to walk their journey alone. And as she looked around at the faces of the veterans who had gathered, she knew one thing for certain. This was her mission, her life's work, and the legacy she was meant to create. In that moment, she felt a peace deeper than any she had known, a sense of purpose that would guide her for the rest of her days. This was where she belonged, a warrior of a different kind, a beacon for those searching for their own way home. And with that realization, CLA knew her journey was just beginning. Months passed, and New Horizons blossomed into a statewide network. each center a lifeline for veterans navigating the transition back into civilian life. The work was demanding, and the scale of the project often felt overwhelming. But CLA found strength in every life touched, every story shared. She was no longer a soldier on the battlefield but a builder, laying the foundation for a future where no veteran would feel alone or forgotten. One spring morning, CLA arrived early at the main Homeward Bound Center. The halls were quiet, the sunlight filtering through the windows, casting a warm glow that felt almost sacred. She moved from room to room, checking on things, taking in the space she had poured her heart into. The walls were lined with photos, stories, and artwork created by veterans, each piece a testament to resilience, to hope. Today was special. Homeward Bound was celebrating its one-year anniversary of New Horizons, and veterans, their families, and community leaders were gathering to honor the program and the difference it had made. CLA walked to the main hall, where the event was being set up, and paused to take it all in. There was an energy in the room that buzzed with excitement and gratitude, a reminder of how far they had come. As the morning unfolded, people began to arrive, filling the room with warmth and laughter. CLA greeted old friends and new faces, each handshake, each hug a reminder of the lives she had touched and the community she had helped create. Among them was Miguel, who had started volunteering part-time at one of the centers. His face lit up with pride as he introduced his family to CLA. There was Anita, who had gone from struggling with her purpose to mentoring other veterans, and Ray, who had become a steady presence at Homeward Bound, helping other older veterans find their way. As CLA moved through the crowd, she was reminded that each person here was part of something larger than themselves. They had all come together, united by shared experiences, building a future that honored their past while embracing the possibilities ahead. Eventually, Lily took the stage, her face glowing with pride as she addressed the crowd. "Welcome, everyone, and thank you for being here to celebrate a year of New Horizons. This program started as a dream, a vision of what could be possible if we came together to support our veterans. And today, standing here with all of you, I see that dream realized." The crowd erupted into applause, and CLA felt a rush of pride. She glanced over at Derek, who stood with Caleb and Rosie, all of them beaming at her, their support a steady anchor in her life. After the applause faded, Lily continued, her gaze turning to CLA. "And none of this would have been possible without the heart and dedication of one person. Someone who has not only changed lives but has shown us all the power of hope and resilience. CLA, could you come up here, please?" CLA's heart skipped a beat, but she stepped forward, feeling a mix of surprise and gratitude as the crowd applauded. She climbed the stage, standing beside Lily, who handed her the microphone with a warm smile. CLA looked out over the sea of faces, all of them filled with encouragement, admiration, and the same sense of purpose that had driven her here. She took a steadying breath, her voice calm but filled with emotion. "Thank you, everyone. When I first came to Homeward Bound, I was searching for my own path, my own place in a world that felt unfamiliar. I thought I'd left my purpose behind on the battlefield, that my life's work was over. But through this journey, I discovered something I never expected, a mission that was just beginning." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the crowd. New Horizons isn't just a program. It's a promise to every veteran who walks through our doors. Promise that they are seen, that their sacrifices are honored, and that they have a place in this world. We are building a legacy of hope, a future where no veteran has to face their journey alone. Applause rippled through the room, and CLA's heart swelled as she continued. "I may have started this journey as a volunteer, as someone trying to find her way, but today, I stand here because of all of you. Each of you has made this possible by sharing your stories, by showing up, by believing in a better future. This is our legacy, and it belongs to all of us." The applause grew, filling the room with a sense of unity and pride that went beyond words. CLA looked out over the crowd, her gaze landing on the faces of the veterans she had come to know so well. They had trusted her, supported her, and together, they had built something extraordinary. After the event, people mingled, sharing stories, laughter, and plans for the future. CLA walked through the crowd, stopping to talk with veterans and their families, each conversation a reminder of why she had chosen this path. It was in these moments, in the connections forged through shared struggles and triumphs, that she felt the true weight of her work. Later that afternoon, as the event began to wind down, CLA found herself standing by the wall of photos, a collage of memories from the past year. Each photo told a story: Miguel's first day volunteering, Ray leading a support group, Anita at a community outreach event. It was a tapestry of resilience, a visual representation of the lives she had touched and the futures she had helped shape. As she looked over the wall, Derek approached, his arms slipping around her shoulders. "You've done something amazing here, CLA," he said, his voice filled with pride. "You've built something that will last long after we're gone." CLA leaned into him, her heart full. "It's not just me, it's everyone here, every veteran who trusted us, every family who supported us. This isn't just my legacy, it's theirs." Derek nodded, his gaze soft. "But you started it. You gave them hope, and that's something that will carry on, no matter what." They stood together in silence, watching as people slowly filed out, lingering over goodbyes and promises to return. And as CLA looked around, she felt a peace settle over her, a deep, abiding sense of purpose that went beyond words. That evening, as she drove home with Derek, Caleb, and Rosie, CLA reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She thought of the long, sleepless nights, the struggles, the moments of doubt. But she also thought of the victories, the lives changed, the bonds forged in the quiet spaces between pain and healing. In the months that followed, new horizons continued to grow, reaching veterans across the state, each center a beacon of hope and resilience. CLA found herself at the heart of it all, a leader, a mentor, and a friend to those who walked the same path she had once traveled. She knew her journey was far from over, that there would always be new challenges, new veterans seeking solace and purpose. But for now, as she settled into the quiet rhythm of her life, CLA felt a peace she hadn't known in years. She had found her purpose, her mission, and in doing so, she had created a legacy that would live on, a legacy of hope, healing, and the belief that no one had to walk their journey alone. And as she lay awake that night, listening to the soft sounds of her family sleeping around her, she knew one thing for certain: she was home.